Okay, good afternoon, everybody. It is 2 o'clock. Welcome to Cabinet, Tuesday, 23rd of March. This is the last Cabinet meeting before the elections on May the 6th. And for one of us here, it is his last Cabinet meeting. Richard Blunt, lead member for Adult Social Care, is not standing this time, so I'd like to formally place on our record our thanks to Richard for his work as a county councillor and his work as the Cabinet lead member for Adult Social Care. Did you want to say a few words, Rich, or not?
Yeah, thank you, Nick. Chairman, thank you, colleagues. It's been a real pleasure to serve with you over the last few years, challenging in all sorts of areas, and appreciate the faith you've had in me over the last few years. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you very much. Rich will still remain leader of North West Leicestershire District Council. He's just standing down from the County Council. Okay, a few bread and butter issues. So this meeting is being held remotely. All members are joining online. It's recorded and archived so you can view it afterwards. And just again, for the sake of the archive and the online, we'll just do a swift roll call. So I'll start off with you, Rich.
Yeah, Richard Blunt, lead member, Adult Social Care.
Lee.
Yeah, Lee Brecken, lead member for Health.
Blake.
Blake Payne, deputy leader.
Trevor.
Yes, Trevor Pendleton, Highways and Transport lead member.
Byron.
Yes, Byron Rhodes, Resources and Finance.
Louise.
Yes, Louise Richardson, lead member for Communities.
Richard Shepherd.
Richard Shepherd, working with Bardon on Resources and Finance.
Thank you. And Deborah.
Deborah Taylor, lead member for Children and Families.
Okay, normal stuff to help the meeting run smoothly. Microphones off. I can see the raised hands function, so if you want to speak, raise your hand and then switch your microphone off when we're done. At the end of the debate on each report, if there doesn't appear to be any dissent, I'll just ask you if you agree with the recommendations. So if you do want to disagree with the recommendations, let me know, because then we'll have to hold a roll call to record the vote. So moving straight on, apologies for absence. We've got a full team, so we have none. Agenda item 1 is minutes. I move that the minutes of the meeting held on February the 5th, 2021 are taken as read, confirmed and signed. I'll move them. Blake?
I'll second them, leader.
All happy? Excellent, thank you. Urgent items. I have one urgent item. It's just an oral report from me as leader concerning membership of the Local Government Association. This will be taken as agenda item 18. Declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest in respect of any items on the agenda? Oh yes, I'll do in order of seeing them. So I'll do Louise, Lee and then Blake. Louise, you're first.
Thank you. Declaration of interest on item 13, the Blaby District Council local plan, as I'm chair of planning at Blaby District.
Very good, thank you, Lee. Lee?
Yeah, same item 13, Blaby District Local Plan. I am a member of Blaby District Council, but I'm not involved with the planning committee.
Very wise. And Blake?
My usual interest in relation to any environment and transport expenditure. Thanks.
Thank you. So we've recorded those. Let's move on, which is agenda item 4, Environment and Transport 2021 to 2022. Highways and Transportation Capital Programme and Works Programme. This report seeks our approval for the aforementioned. These reflect the Environment and Transport Department's current key highway service related policies, strategies and plans. We've got Anne Carruthers with us online. She's the Director of Environment and Transport. She'll present. Then I'll go to Trevor, who has responsibility for this matter in Cabinet. So over to you, Anne.
Good afternoon. This report sets out the Highways and Transport Capital Programme and the Works Programme for the coming financial year and shows the 4-year profile over the MTFS period. It's a significant capital programme at just over 200 million for the 4-year period, with 46 million spent in 2020 21-22. While this is a significant programme of works, it's worth pointing out that with the challenge of delivering this, as well as the wider financial challenges of the County Council, that there will be little opportunity to take on any other commitments, such as those emerging from District Council's local plans, and there will need to be careful consideration of in relation to any future bidding opportunities. In addition, as a result of this financial context, the County Council is developing an infrastructure policy to seek agreements with the local planning authorities and helping manage the financial risk in the provision of infrastructure related to the delivery of growth. Appendix A shows a 4-year programme detailing the improvement works we're doing as a major schemes element of the highway maintenance allocations. And it also details the other aspects of the capital programme, such as spend and vehicle replacement. For the asset management side of the works, which is basically our highway maintenance activities, the biggest areas of spend are patching and surface dressing programmes. Cabinet's aware of a risk-based approach. We don't have a blanket approach to defects. We do it according to risk, and our endeavour to focus on preventative works rather than reactive, which tend to be less effective and less efficient in terms of value for money. The Appendix B of the report shows the works programme and gives a breakdown of what will be delivered in the coming financial year. It's worth noting, however, that many of these activities are part of longer term projects, and equally some of the maintenance work may need to be reprioritised during the year depending on reacting to things like weather, etc. We may need to channel some of the funding. E&T Scrutiny received this report earlier in the month, and a discussion took place, particularly around the merits of improvement works such as large new infrastructure for local people versus ongoing maintenance challenges on the network. The committee overall, however, did support the proposed capital programme. The revised recommendations, Leader, are as per item 4 on the order paper. Thank you.
Thank you. Trevor, you're on.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to say that the department's work and its status with regards to its programme is and has been reviewed as absolutely superb, and I'm really delighted that we're able to stick to a forward programme. It's going to be very tight in terms of the capital programme, significantly tight. And we will need, to look at that very, very carefully indeed. And you've heard of the service as a strategic authority, roadworks wise, to support all the local planning authorities in the best way that we can. In saying that, I'd like to move the motion on the order paper that the Environment and Transport 21 to 22 Highways and Transport Capital Programme and Works Programme, as approved in the MTFS, be noted at this stage, since there is a need to review elements of the capital programme in order to take account of the consequences and affordability of the transport infrastructure requirements of housing and economic growth emerging from local plans. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Trevor. Byron.
Yes, Leader. This is a moving situation, and of course, as was said at our annual general meeting, the meeting where we set the MTFS and the budget, we knew we would have to look very closely at the capital programme. So what this motion does today is it enables things to go forward, but during the course of the next few months, we'll be taking a fresh look at a number of elements of it. So I'll second the motion.
Thank you very much, Byron. Blake.
Many thanks, Leader. And just to follow on from what Mr. Rose has just outlined, I too am happy to support the motion on the order paper, especially as it refers to noting the report and also the fact that we'll need to review our capital programme in time to reflect the challenges in terms of resourcing major capital infrastructure. There's one further comment I would like to make, and it relates to the report directly. I realise that by the nature of the beast and the size of money and the levels of money that we intend to spend as an authority on infrastructure, particularly highs infrastructure, this is a moving feast, and it's never easy to put a programme together such as the one before us. But there are certain elements of the programme that seem to be carried forward from year to year to year without a particularly clear narrative as to how we're going to spend some of those monies. For instance, the M1 Junction 20A. I appreciate that we can't ignore emerging plans at borough planning authorities, and we have to recognise that there is some work to do to explore how those plans could actually be delivered in practice. But it would be very helpful moving forward that we have clear narrative within our reports as to how, if we are carrying forward these monies, we intend to use those monies in that given year. But with that said, I'm happy to note the report and happy to support the notion of a review of our highways capital infrastructure in due course. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Blake. I have nobody else indicating to speak. So can I say it's been moved by Trevor and seconded by Byron. Can we have just a show of hands in favour? Thank you very much. We move on now to agenda item 5, which is the A511 growth corridor proposals, Bardon Link Road. These are on pages 51 to 62. It concerns progress on the development of the A511. We've got comments, please, to note from Terry, that's Dr. Terry Inon, one of the local members. These are attached to the order paper mark 5. Again, Anne Carruthers, Director of Environment and Transport, will present the report. Then again, I'll be going to Trevor as he's got responsibility for this. Anne? Thank you.
The County Council is currently in the process of bidding for 40 million from DFT of a £49 million scheme of improvements on the 511 corridor. The remaining funding will come as developer contributions through the Colville contribution strategy, which we have an agreement with the District Council around, although 4 million has been earmarked as being forward funded by the County Council through the MTFS. The scheme itself involves 8 junction improvements, a length of dualling, so new dual carriageway, and a new Bardon Link Road. And it's all to support the local growth set in the local plan and also Leicester and Leicestershire's strategic growth plan. We originally submitted the outline business case to DFT in January 2020, but later updated it in the summer to reflect the COVID scenario. And we are expecting an announcement on that funding bid in May. So we're awaiting that currently. Subject to that, to a successful announcement on the funding, the next stage of the project will be to carry out a pre-submission consultation on the planning application that's needed to take forward the new Link Road element of the scheme. That consultation would take place late May and into June, and the planning application itself would be submitted in the autumn this year. Beyond that, the timetable for the scheme includes processes for compulsory purchase order and side road orders, and would lead to construction start date on site early in 2024 if we obviously get to that stage. The report requests approval for the pre-submission consultation exercise itself and the full recommendations as per the order paper. Thank you.
Thank you. And Trevor. Microphone on, Trevor.
Thank you, Chairman. A little technical glitch. I'm happy to move the recommendations on the order paper, and in saying so, just say that this shows just how well we can work with one of our local planning authorities to bring ahead a piece of infrastructure which is so much needed for the area. We've forward funded it. We equally depend upon developer contributions to make sure that we're not overextended. Northwest Leicester District Council fully get that and are working with us. I can't wait to see the improvement for the district and the area around this development in terms of improved traffic flows and, of course, improved air quality. It really will set us up well. I'm very happy to have proposed this, Leader. It's spot on.
Thank you, Trevor. And also, as a North West Leicestershire County Councillor, I'd like to second it and welcome it. And it does reflect the entrepreneurial nature of North West Leicestershire, the fastest growing district in the county. On this road as well, they're also building a new leisure centre just off it, so this will help access in and out of the new leisure centre. Can I also place on record my thanks to Andrew Bridgen, the local Member of Parliament, who supported us all the way through with this bid, and also to cap it all, Trevor, as you said, it'll also help with air quality, because on parts of this road the air quality is poor. So I've seconded it. I'm just seeing we have no more speakers indicating, so it was moved by Trevor, seconded by myself. Can I have a show of hands in favour? Thank you very much. Thank you, Anne. Agenda item 6, provision of short breaks and supported living services. These are on pages 63 to 72. This report concerns Council's adult social care services for short breaks and supported living. It is proposed to make some changes to the original proposals, and John Wilson, Director of Adults and Communities, will explain. I'll then go over to Richard Blunt as Cabinet Lead for Adults and Communities to speak. So, John, over to you. Microphone on, John. No, John. Obviously getting too old to work your microphone, John. If we just hang on, John's experiencing very good, John. Well done.
Thank you. Sorry, I got my elbow on the off button. Sorry. So you recall in 2018 approving proposals for the refurbishment of the Trees care home in Hinckley and the replacement of the short breaks facility on the site occupied by Hamilton Court and Smith Crescent in Colville. The refurbishment of the Trees long-stay residential care services was completed in December of last year, providing accommodation for up to 8 people, alongside the remainder of the building, which currently provides short breaks for 4 individuals. The refurbishment of the Trees had been completed on the basis that the former permanent residents had expressed a wish to return to the Trees following its redevelopment. However, following reviews of the current arrangements, all have now decided to remain in their alternative care settings. In Colville, Hamilton Court Residential Care Facility closed in 2019, and plans were approved to redevelop the Cropson Drive Smith Crescent site to provide supported living accommodation, a replacement short breaks facility, and a day services resource. Despite a capital allocation of 3.7 million, however, the development has been unable to progress following 2 tender exercises. Firstly, due to environmental factors, and secondly, due to the cost of the tender submissions. Meanwhile, the existing short break service has remained largely closed over the course of the last 12 months due to the pandemic, with essential short breaks being provided on alternative sites within the county. Members are therefore being asked today to approve an engagement and consultation process to explore the opportunity to review the provision of short break services to benefit from the recently refurbished site at the Trees, which could now provide sufficient capacity for up to 12 beds on one site. This would allow for a less intensive development on the Cropson Drive site in Colville, prioritising the much needed supported living accommodation, together with either a step-through facility for young people transitioning from children's services or a similar service for people with learning disabilities and or autism. There are 17 people who currently use the short break service in Colville, and we propose to undertake a short period of engagement with them and their families during April, ahead of a wider formal engagement consultation process in May, the outcome of which will be reported back to Cabinet in July of this year. The Adults and Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee considered a report regarding the provision of short breaks and supported living services at its meeting on the 8th of March, in which it confirmed its support for the planned consultation and engagement. The committee also took account of comments received from 2 local members, Mr. Wyatt and Dr. Inan, and noted their comments as laid out in paragraph 44 of this report. Thank you.
Thank you. John, Rich, this is one of yours.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think this is a case of problems and opportunities. The problem is the trees have been refurbished, but now we don't have a use for them. The other problem is Hamilton Court, as I've just heard from John, is to do redevelopment. We haven't got room. So we're trying, in principle, to create 2 new opportunities, to find a new use for the trees at Hinckley, which would be excellent, and to solve the overdevelopment at Hamilton Court. So in principle, it looks like a logical thing. The only thing I'm going to say, which I want all Cabinet colleagues to listen to, is that there is a sensitivity over this, and that is that the people who presently use the short break facilities at Colville will be asked to drive a lot further, and these are very vulnerable people. So the consultation will be very important indeed. We need to make sure that the people who use facilities are happy with it, and whoever's got this portfolio and whoever's out serving in the Cabinet, they can be mindful to the feedback, particularly from the people who use the service. And apart from that, Chairman, happy to move recommendations on page 63 and 64.
Yes, indeed, Richard. I mean, consultation is just that. So we'll take account of what people say when we consult them. Can I go to Louise?
Yes, I'm happy to second, Leader. I think the consultation's needed, and I think we're all aware of the sensitivities involved.
Yes, that's good. I mean, we do take consultation seriously here. We're not tokenistic with it, are we? So moved by Richard, seconded by Louise. All in favour? Thank you very much. Thank you, John. Next one, 7, recommissioning of domestic and sexual violence and abuse services. This is on pages 73 to 84. It concerns a proposed model for these services for people who are experiencing domestic and sexual violence and abuse. These services are provided with other partners, the City Council and Rutland Council and the Police and Crime Commissioner. Overview and Health Scrutiny received a report at its last meeting on last Thursday, and a draft minute is attached to the order paper marked 7. We've got Mike Sands, Director of Public Health, and Joshna with us today, who's the consultant in public health. They're going to present the report. Then I shall go to Lee Brecken as our Cabinet Lead Member for Health to speak. And while you're on, Mike, can we offer our congratulations to your, I think it's an honorary doctorate from Loughborough University. Well deserved, Mike. You and Lee have worked exceptionally hard this year. Lee's going to wait for his doctorate, but at least you've got yours. To you, Mike.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, it's something of a great honour, which I wasn't expecting, I must admit. So this picks up the world that we knew before COVID. We were beginning the recommissioning of domestic violence and sexual abuse services just before COVID broke, and it's obviously been in abeyance for the last year. But Josh just picked up the reins again. And the report, as you say, is just to take us on the next steps of that recommissioning journey. So, as always, because I'm supported by a great team, I'll hand over to Josh.
Yep. So this report outlines the proposed model for the procurement of domestic and sexual violence and abuse services, also the outcome of the consultation on the proposed model, and then to seek approval to delegate authority to the Director of Public Health to proceed with the procurement process and appoint the preferred bidder for the provision of certain elements of the model on the basis that relevant partner organisations will be commissioning other elements as appropriate. So the background to this is that a report was brought to Cabinet in February 2019 by the Director of Children and Family Services, which detailed the recommissioning work undertaken and sought approval to consult on the proposed structure for domestic and sexual violence and abuse services to be commissioned across LLR. While the overall strategic and operational function for DSVA services sits with the community safety team within Children and Family Services, the Public Health Department now leads on the commissioning. So currently the County Council jointly commissions a domestic and sexual violence and abuse service with Leicester City Council, Rutland Council and the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner, with Leicester City Council currently managing the contract on behalf of all commissioners. The service is provided by United Against Violence and Abuse, which is a consortium of voluntary sector providers. The service provides support to survivors of domestic abuse and sexual violence, and this is through the provision of a telephone helpline for professionals and the public, individual and group support for high risk and medium risk victims of domestic abuse and also of sexual violence, therapeutic interventions, which includes counselling provision and also training and education for professionals and the public. The total value of the current contract is just over £1 million across LLR. And in addition to this, Public Health also separately commissions a service that provides support to female victims of domestic abuse within a refuge setting, with the current total contract value of just short of £120,000 per year. So following a review of the current service model, a review of the need across the sub-region, and also engagement with providers, service users and wider stakeholders, a revised delivery model is proposed across Leicestershire, Leicester and Rutland, with the aim of meeting the future demand within our available resources. The current contracts for all of the services were due to end on 31st of March of this year. They've been extended in light of the COVID pandemic to 31st of March 2022. A 12-week consultation took place in the autumn of 2019, which comprised of surveys and public engagement events, and the consultation showed broad support for the proposed model. Further detail is provided within the report. The approach taken to recommission the full service across Leicestershire, Leicester and Rutland allows partners to retain control of specific elements of commissioned services for their locality, but also includes control over contract management and performance monitoring, whilst also ensuring a coordinated approach to delivery. A domestic and sexual violence needs assessment for LLR was completed in 2017, and this was refreshed in 2019. The findings from this informed the LLR domestic and sexual violence and abuse strategy. The priorities within that strategy underpin the proposed model, which takes into account that specific groups are more vulnerable to domestic and sexual violence and abuse. The model that we've pulled together comprises of 5 different service elements, with Leicestershire's funding contribution totalling just short of £386,000 per year. This includes a help plan and engagement service, a domestic violence and abuse locality support service, a sexual violence and abuse service, a domestic abuse accommodation related support service, and a domestic violence and abuse perpetrator intervention service. The details behind that are all provided within the report. Just an additional comment, the reason that we've chosen to spot purchase the domestic violence and abuse perpetrator intervention element is because we'd like to take a further review of the evidence as to the effectiveness of this programme, and also a review of its current reach before we commit a contribution to this going forwards. So in terms of next steps, all of the commissioning partners are now securing agreement for the model and agreement to proceed with procurement through their respective governance procedures over the course of this month in preparation for the tender publication in May 2021. Also, in February of this year, it was announced by central government that there would be additional funding for all Tier 1 and Tier 2 authorities for 2021-22 for domestic abuse safe accommodation services. The allocation for Leicestershire County Council is just over £1.1 million. So proposals on how the additional money will be allocated to supplement this new model will be submitted to Cabinet at a later date. Recommendations are as per paragraph 3 of the report.
Thank you, Joshna. Very comprehensive report. Lee?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It is a well put together report, as always. Yeah, great work from Joshna. The full consultation, as outlined on page 77, has gone ahead. It's been over a long period of time. The 5 key service elements are outlined. I think it's interesting, the scrutiny comments which were attached to the order paper, they looked at this only last week and they were happy in principle with the recommendations we were making. More than happy to propose the recommendations on page 73, and if you note the second bullet point approves the new model for the provision as detailed in the report, noting that the model will also require that approval of the commissioning partners, and as Joshna outlined, that has been that's ongoing at the moment. So it's a great job. Happy to propose, Chair.
Thank you very much, Lee. Deborah?
Thank you. Do you want me to second, Leader? Sorry.
If you can, Deborah, and then comment.
Yeah, well, I'm really happy to second this. I just wanted to make a comment about us doing some more work with the perpetrators, because I think, we do some excellent work with the victims, but what we need to do is get further upstream and deal with the perpetrators. Otherwise, they end up moving from relationship to relationship with the same effect. So I'm really pleased, and I hope that does go forward and we start having some more perpetrator programmes as well.
Indeed. Okay, well, in my view, domestic and sexual violence is appalling, and people that suffer from it, as it says in the home, it's even worse, especially during the the current pandemic. There's actually no escape from it for a lot of people. So you've done some great work here, Joshna and Mike. Everybody's supporting it. Moved by Lee, seconded by Deborah. Can I have a show of hands? Thank you very much. Agenda item 8, health weight strategy for Leicestershire. This is on pages 85 to 138. This is the outcome of consultation on the healthy weight strategy and recommends its approval. Again, we've got Mike to present, and he's joined by Elizabeth Orton, consultant in public health, and then it'll be back over to you, Lee. So Mike, is it you or Elizabeth or both of you?
Yeah, it's going to be another very short introduction from me. Never more important that we get a healthy weight strategy right, given what we do know about COVID and its and the interrelation with obesity. But again, well supported. So I'm going to hand over to Liz to do the detail. Thank you.
Very good. Liz?
Thank you, Mike. So the paper sets out the rationale for having a healthy weight strategy for Leicestershire, outlines the findings from the public and stakeholder consultation, and presents the proposed final version of the strategy for your consideration and hopefully approval. The paper and the strategy itself has set out the case for action. As Mike just said, there's never been a stronger case than just now, where we know COVID-19 is very closely related with overweight and obesity and adverse outcomes. As described in the Joint Strategic Needs Assessment from 2019, overweight and obesity are both complex, or is a complex problem, with many factors contributing to the quality and quantity of food that we eat, and also the calorie expenditure and the exercise that we undertake. So there's no single answer to how best to support people to achieve and maintain healthy weight. It really does need a multi-agency, whole systems approach. So we've previously brought a paper to Cabinet with the draft strategy, requesting approval to consult on that strategy with the public and with our stakeholders. In addition to the discussions of the strategy, we've also been to the Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee and to the Health and Wellbeing Board back in November. And we've undertaken focus groups based on findings from the Equality and Human Rights Impact Assessment that we've undertaken, and set up an online platform for people who are using the weight management services to contribute their views about the strategy, and then also, of course, invited responses to comment on the strategy by the usual way of a online questionnaire on our website, or hard copy if requested. So the three areas of focus for the strategy are set out in paragraphs 19 to 22, including the three key themes being the environment, tackling the environment that we live in to make it less conducive to overweight and obesity, or less obesogenic. Supporting people to maintain a healthy weight through the services that we provide, but also looking at specific settings of where people live, work and learn. And then finally, ensuring that there's leadership around healthy weight in our area, and importantly, that professionals feel able and confident to talk about people about their weight. The consultation feedback is set out in paragraphs 24 to 35 of the report. Overall, there was strong support for the draft strategy and the themes, and with many excellent improvements suggested as well. So the changes that we've made to the strategy, the draft strategy, are set out in paragraph 33. In brief, we've kept those three themes and 5 objectives. They've remained the same, but we've placed more focus on the role that physical activity plays in maintaining a healthy weight, made that more explicit in the strategy. We've placed focus on the need to address individuals' underlying causes of obesity, such as poor mental health and the important role that plays. More emphasis on the need to be culturally aware in the services that we provide and how we communicate with people about how to access services, and promoting healthy weight to support people with disabilities in particular as well. So since this strategy is a call for partners across the system to work together on this important topic, the accountability of delivery of the strategy is going to lie in different places depending on the actions taken. There'll be some actions that are taken at the system level that will be across LLR, like weight management services, for example, cut across the all different providers across the system. There'll be some actions that are across the county, done once across the whole county, and then some actions which will be very much local actions to take. So overall, we expect that the strategy will have a positive impact on inequalities across Leicestershire, and I'd welcome any comments or suggestions that you have about the draft strategy.
Thank you, Liz. Lee?
Thank you, Chairman. The strategy is 3 themes, 5 objectives, a 5-year period, fully documented in the report that you have with you. I just have to compliment Liz for the professional way that she's handled this document, and it's been put together. Consultation has been very deep, it's been very thorough, and that's a compliment with all the different groups that we've accessed through this. And I'm more than happy to recommend. Just before I sign off on this item, I think publicly thank Mike and congratulate him, as mentioned at the last item, his honorary doctorate. I think he really has been the face. This to me is the bread and butter that public health do year on year out. But it's really been Mike's face has been the face of the Leicestershire County Council Public Health team, and I think it's well deserved. So thank you to that. More than happy to make the recommendations on page 85 of the agenda pack. Thanks, Chairman.
Excellently. Blake?
Yes, can I too congratulate Mike on his honorary doctorate. It is thoroughly deserved. All the work as our Director of Public Health he's put into dealing with COVID in particular this last year is remarkable, and he deserves the recognition that he's got. Again, I'm more than happy to formally second this report. It's one of those strategies, as ever, we have many of them at Leicestershire County Council that could go under the radar, but they are extremely important. On one level, maintaining healthy weight is about calories in, calories out, but as the report suggests, there's a lot more complexity, particularly around mental health and other issues to do with general health. So it is a good report. As ever, if there was more resources, I dare say we could reach out to more organisations and really make sure that we embed across Leicestershire the principles within the report. But it's a good starting place, and I'm very, very happy to formally second. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. So no other people wanting to speak. So all in favour? Byron? Okay, agenda item 9, white paper on health and social care and mental health, pages 139 to 148. It concerns the recent government white paper on the aforementioned and the implications of these for the council services. We've got John Wilson, Director of Adults and Communities, to present, and then we're going over to Richard Blunt, who, as you know, has responsibility. John?
Thank you, Leader. So as you said, this report covers 2 recently published government white papers, the first being the Integration and Innovation Working Together to Improve Health and Social Care for All, and the second, the Reforming of the Mental Health Act white paper. The Health and Care white paper focuses on the development of integrated care systems, or ICSs as they become known, and the increased joint working within the NHS and between the NHS and social care in particular. Members will have noted that on Friday of last week, the Leicestershire and Rutland were given the go-ahead by NHS England to form an integrated care system, starting from this April. And the ICSs will be put on a statutory footing. They'll consist of 2 governance bodies, an ICS NHS body and a separate ICS Health and Care Partnership. The ICS body will have responsibility for developing a plan to meet the health needs of the population, securing health services to meet those needs, and developing a capital plan for NHS providers. The ICS Health and Care Partnership will bring together NHS, local government and other partners. The County Council will have both member and officer representation on the partnership, and its role will be to bring together systems to support integration and to develop a plan to address the system's health, public health and social care needs. And both ICS, NHS bodies and local authorities will need to have regard to that plan when making decisions. There is recognition within the white paper that place should be consistent with local authority boundaries, which is something that we've been arguing for some time. And in the local context, place will be coterminous with upper tier local authority boundaries. Health and wellbeing boards will remain in place and continue to have an important responsibility to develop joint strategic needs assessments and joint health and wellbeing strategies, which ICSs will need to have regard to. But there does seem to be a significant overlap between the Health and Wellbeing Board and the ICS Health and Care Partnership, both in terms of membership and function. The white paper also refers to the NHS ICS body taking on the current CCG's responsibilities in relation to oversight and scrutiny committees. But there's also a proposal that the Secretary of State be able to intervene earlier in local reconfiguration changes. And certainly the local authority referral process would be removed. So it's not clear at the moment whether the Secretary of State would be required to seek the views of health scrutiny prior to making any interventions. The white paper proposes to give adult social care a more clearly defined role within the structure of an ICS body, but again, it's not clear how that would be enacted. And there will be a new duty for the CQC to assess local authorities on the delivery of adult social care services. And there'll be a power for the Secretary of State to intervene in a local authority that's been assessed as failing. Now, clearly there is some concern here that this could be quite onerous and time consuming, particularly if it's akin to the relationship between Ofsted and children's services. There'll be a new legal framework for discharge to assess, which was introduced as part of the Coronavirus Act. And the white paper will propose a new legislative power around the Better Care Fund to allow for place-based planning over a medium term rather than on an annual cycle. And that in itself is to be welcomed. Also to be welcomed are proposals to help tackle obesity by further introducing restrictions on advertising for high fat, salty and sugary foods. And there'll be a greater opportunity for delegation of public health services and functions. The role of public health within an ICS NHS body hasn't been clarified, and to ensure that compulsion is only exercised when absolutely necessary. They'll be proposing to introduce new advanced choice documents to enable people to set out in advance what care and treatment they would prefer and any treatments they would refuse. Patients will have a right to a care and treatment plan, which will take into account their wishes and preferences, alongside a new right to refuse treatment, including the right to suffer. The white paper does not propose to make fundamental changes to the role of approved mental health professionals. The local authority currently has a duty to make these available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to respond to referrals for compulsory admission. But there are proposals to enhance the role of independent mental health advocates. And advocacy services are currently funded through local authorities, and therefore any increase in that role may increase funding requirements. The white paper also proposes to give people more opportunity to review and challenge detention by bringing forward the review periods and giving greater access to tribunals. And there'll be an obligation in legislation on health and local authorities to follow tribunal decisions in much the same way as the Special Educational Needs Disability Tribunal, and therefore that could have significant resource implications. Whilst the proposal is that learning disability and autism would not be grounds for detention for treatment under the Act, local authorities will be required to ensure that there is adequate supply of community services for people with a learning disability. What constitutes adequate supply is unclear. The white paper notes that there are particular sensitivities in delivering mental health services to children and young people, alongside the complexities of balancing individual and parental rights and decision making. However, the provisions set out in the white paper to have advanced choice documents, care and treatment plans, nominated people will equally apply to children and young people. So in conclusion, both white papers have implications for the County Council in terms of changes to social care, public health and partnership working. And whilst the move towards collaboration and partnership working and integration is generally to be welcomed, there are and remain some concerns. Alongside the governance implications of the integration white paper, there are resource implications of the Mental Health Act white paper and the provision of community services and future commissioning arrangements. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. John, Richard.
Oh. Chairman, your guess from that incredibly technical white paper that John's gone through. So I'm going to do no more than move the recommendations 2A and 2B on page 139 of the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rich. Lee?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think compliments to John and Mike, whose name's on the paper. To summarise 2 white papers over 10 pages into very succinct documents is a challenge and an achievement in itself. And I think we just have to fully note the implications that John's outlined that are listed in the report. So more than happy to second, Chair.
Thank you very much. So moved by Rich, seconded by Lee. All in favour, please. Thank you very much. Agenda item 10, Airfield Business Park Development Proposal, pages 149 to 160. It's a report about the proposals for the next phase of the Airfield Business Park development. We're asked to agree the allocation of resources to support this and agree for the Director of Corporate Resources to proceed with work to enable a planning application to be submitted. Scrutiny Commission considered a report on this on the 15th of March and a draft minute is attached to the order paper marked 10. We've got Chris Tambini with us, he's the Director of Corporate Resources, and with him also is John Bennett, Head of Strategic Property Services, who will present the report. I then go to Byron Rhodes, who's the Cabinet Lead for Finance and Property, to speak. So is it you, John?
Yes, thank you, Leader.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Today's report is to advise Cabinet of the proposals of the next phases development at Airfield Business Park, just north of Market Harborough. Cabinet is asked to approve the recommendations in paragraph 2, namely, as well as noting the proposals themselves, to authorise the budget of £9.5 million and that a planning application be submitted for the final phases of the scheme. The application will be for 34 new commercial units with photovoltaics on the roof and electric car charging points on each of the units. The units will range in size from 1,500 square feet to 10,000 square feet. In order that the development can be as successful as possible, the tender will be submitted for the construction of the first 27 units, and the remaining units will be separately tendered after the first lot has been constructed. Members will note in paragraph 12 that the scheme is expected to generate £787,000 a year, which is in addition to the £550,000 that the current scheme will generate when fully let. As an aside, 10 out of the 12 units have already been let on the current scheme, and we are negotiating terms for the final 2 units. Paragraphs 18 to 22 detail some of the history of the County Council's investment at Airfield Farm. Having acquired the site in 2016 for 4.3 million, then selling on some land to Thorpe's for their factory for 800,000, making a net acquisition price of 3.6 million, you'll see that the current phase has already been valued at 7.1 million, and a conservative estimate of the current phase that's been proposed, will have a gross development value of 12 million. But even a slight improvement in the yield will add another million to this figure. The current estimate is therefore a valuation of circa £20 million for the completed scheme. The projected income of 790,000 for this phase and the current phase income of 550,000 means the scheme will be generating 1.34 million of income with regular rent reviews and anticipated capital growth. Paragraphs 23 to 27 provide more detail on the scheme design and next steps. And para 27 details the proposed timeline if Cabinet approves the recommendations. And paragraphs 28 to 37 go into a little bit more detail on the financial sensitivities. Paras 38 to 42 detail the planning and procurement process. It should be noted that as this scheme is on County Council land, and as it will be developed, funded and ultimately held as an investment by the County Council, the County Council's Development Control and Regulatory Board will determine the application sometime this summer. Paragraphs 43 through to 47 will all be covered as part of the planning application process. The recommendations are as part of the green order sheet. Thank you.
Seems super good to me, John. Byron? Byron? Microphone on, Byron.
No, it's finally works. It wouldn't come on. Right, yes, I will move the motion on the order paper, which gives a go-ahead for this. I think John has set out the detail very well, and I think it's a first-class investment. The first phase of it's gone very well since I opened it 2 years ago, and I'm very pleased now we're moving on the second phase, and I think this will be every bit as successful as the first part. So very happy to move.
He's seconding it anyway.
Many thanks, Leader. I'm delighted to be able to second this particular agenda item, not least when I was the lead member for property here at County Hall. It was under that leadership that we decided to diverse some of the holdings throughout the county and invest in Market Harbour. I think everyone in the harbour area can see the benefit of the county council's investment, and being a county council representative, it's with great pride that I'm able to sit here and say that we can achieve really, really good things as a county council for the benefit of Leicestershire and the components of Leicestershire. To deliver on behalf of the public taxpayer revenue to the tune of 1.34 million to reinvest into frontline public services, it's remarkable. And let's not forget, without the county council intervention in 2016, the harbour area would still be looking at a derelict, redundant site that wasn't able to be developed because of the banking crisis of 2008-2009. So it's a win-win. We've helped out Leicestershire, we've helped out a particular area in Leicestershire, and in turn that area is helping the county council and our frontline services. So it's a brilliant proposal, and I have no hesitation in supporting and formally seconding the motion on the order paper. Thank you, Leader.
Yes, I think it's very good, John. Not only have we, as Blake said, developed a derelict site, you've also built some relatively, in developers' terms, some smaller units, which are more likely to appeal to smaller local businesses rather than the mega B8s that everybody builds. You also achieved a capital value of in excess of 20 million, and as Blake again said, a revenue income of 1.2-ish million. So, you know, it really is a good development down there, and I'm very happy to support it. So it was moved by Byron, seconded by Blake. Can we have a show of hands? Excellent. Well done, John.
Thank you.
Moving on to strategic energy property strategy. This is on pages 161 to 184. It is our revised strategic property energy strategy and accompanying action plan for approval. Note the Environment and Transport Overview and Scrutiny Committee and the Scrutiny Commission had reports on this at their meetings on the 4th of March and the 15th of March. Also note that draft minutes were attached to the order paper marked 11A and 11B. Chris Tambini, Director of Corporate Resources, and Hannah Moss, Energy Business Partner in the department, will present the report. Then I'm back over to you, Byron, because again, this is one of yours. So, Chris, are we going with Hannah?
No, you're going to go with me today, Leader.
Oh dear. Where's
Thanks
Hannah?
for that vote of confidence.
Oh, there's Hannah. Hi, Hannah.
Yeah, Hannah's here. She's obviously done all the work on the strategy, and she's here if there's any kind of detailed questions. The energy strategy is a subset of the environment strategy, and it sets out in kind of practical terms what we're doing with our own property to reduce our energy use. And also, I'm very happy to report that over recent years that there have been some major achievements, and they're detailed in the report. I'll just highlight a couple of them. CO2 emissions have actually reduced by 67% over the period 2008-9 to 2019-20. And we also now generate 16% of our own energy needs from renewables, which is a very large increase. In terms of the forward look, the council has obviously signed up to the climate emergency, which aims to reduce our emissions to zero by 2030. And that's been a key driver of our future targets. And the two key targets in the strategy are a further 30 to 50% reduction in our annual energy consumption from council buildings by 2030, and also an ambitious 50% increase in on-site renewable generation as well. There's a range of projects that are set out in the strategy to achieve those targets. They include kind of energy efficiency measures and a far more ambitious programme of energy generation from renewables. And the recommendations are set out on the green order paper. Great, thank you, Chris. Byron, this is one of yours.
Yes, it is. It's the second paper I've got this afternoon. Look, this is really great because we've got this target by 2030 to be carbon, to be net zero carbon, and we've got to do this with our own property, and this is what this strategy will enable us to do. So it requires a certain amount of investment, but we'll get there, and I think it's a good way forward. So I'm happy to move it.
Very good, Blake.
Yeah, I just want to commend the strategic property team within the Corporate Resources Department. it's through their efforts largely that as a county council we've been able to reduce our carbon emissions in excess of 60% over the last half a decade or so, notably through what we've done with our property, our main property here with solar panels and biomass boilers, etc. This is the next stage. This is a strategy to further reduce some of the emissions from our property. But what it is not is a carbon reduction strategy. As the Director of Resources has already pointed out, this is a sub-document of the wider environment strategy. And in time, the County Council will bring forward a full carbon reduction strategy as it applies to wider Leicestershire. But we've always said, let's get our own house in order, and this is a part of that job. So I commend it and I'll formally second it. Thank you.
Yeah, you know what, Blake, I think this is really good. 67% reduction in CO2 and 16% of our own electricity generated. It's something we should be proud of. And although we're in Purda, I'd like to say, vote Conservative, we are green, Blake. Having said that, it's been moved by Byron and seconded by Blake. All in favour of Green Conservatives? Very good, thank you. Next one, Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman report regarding provision of suitable full-time education. This is on pages 185 to 204. It is a report from the Ombudsman. Jane Moore's going to introduce it. Lauren's with us as well. Lauren's the Director of Law and Governance, just in case. Then I'll be going to you, Deborah, because it's your responsibility. So over to you, Jane.
Thank you, Leader. So the purpose of this report is to advise Cabinet of a report of the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman, where the LGO intends to issue his findings in a public report. So just by way of background, the LGO has investigated a complaint made by a parent that the council failed to arrange appropriate full-time education for her daughter following a house move. The child was removed from a school role on the 18th of January 2019, and the Ombudsman found that the council at fault for failing to ensure any education provision was in place until February 2020, and a school place wasn't secured until June 2020. The LGO made a number of conclusions, primarily around drift and the council failing in its duty to provide education during the key stage of the child's education. He found a lack of coordination between different teams and a number of missed opportunities, and also that he recognised that the council does have limited powers to exercise over academies to ensure the admission of pupils, but that in this case the council failed to progress a referral to the Education and Skills Funding Agency. The LGO did welcome in his report the council's willingness to accept the faults that he'd set out, and that the council had already taken proactive remedial action in response. The LGO made a number of recommendations to the council, and the council has accepted all of the recommendations as set out in paragraph 20, and we've already carried out or are in the process of dealing with all of the actions set out. The actions are set out in Appendix B, which is attached to this report. In terms of the legal implications, the LGO does require the council to put the report before elected members for consideration, which is what we're doing today. And also, in this instance, as the council did fully accept the findings and consider the recommendations to be fair and reasonable. However, the LGO does expect the council to comply with the LGO, but obviously we are accepting them fully. The LGO also requires the council to publish a notice in the local press on 2 consecutive occasions. We've done this, and also to ensure that the final report is shared with Cabinet. We have confirmed both of these actions with the LGO. So I move to the recommendations on the Green Order paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you. Jane's given you a really good overview there, so I haven't got a lot more to add to that. But the Ombudsman did exercise their legal powers for us to scrutinise all fair access applications received by the council since January 2019, and was satisfied that this was an isolated case. We're pretty confident that there's no other similar cases within our system, and significant steps have been taken to ensure that the join up between the admissions and the inclusion service has been joined up fully. So we've taken majority of the action that's on that appendix has already been completed, so we're satisfied that we're doing everything we can to avoid this happening in the future.
The recommendations, Deborah?
Yeah, I'll move the recommendations on the order
I'll
paper.
second them. Anybody else? All in favour? Thank you. Thanks, Jane. Response to the Blaby District new local plan is agenda item 13. It's the options consultation. It's on pages 205 to 266. We received comments from David Bell on this report. He's Hinkley Bosworth, isn't he? Yes. Oh, well, we received comments from somebody who's not even in the district, Mr. Bill. These are attached to your order paper mark 13. We've got Tom Pennell, Assistant Chief Executive, to present the report, and then Trevor is the Cabinet lead on these matters. So over to you, Tom.
Yes, thank you, Leader. And just in relation to Mr. Bill's comments, so a response to his comments is being prepared by colleagues in the Environment and Transport Department, and that will be with him soon. The report proposes a response to Blaby District Council's new local plan options document. The District Council's deadline for comments was just over a week ago, so this report in the appendices has already been submitted to the District Council with the caveat that the submission is subject to Cabinet's comments today. The consultation document sets out options for the local plan and forms part of what is known as the Regulation 18 stage of the local plan process, a preferred option version of the local plan, sometimes known as the Regulation 19 plan, will be consulted on in about a year's time. The Blaby local plan is being prepared in a context provided by the strategic growth plan, which has been prepared by and signed up to by all of the local planning authorities in Leicester and Leicestershire, together with the County Council and the LEP. And given its location, Blaby's local plan is a key one in delivering the growth set out in the strategic growth plan. Changes to government planning policy will also influence the local plan, and a recent government announcement on housing numbers will be influential in that regard, and that's being addressed across Leicester and Leicestershire through the preparation of a statement of common ground, and the Blaby local plan, as it progresses, will need to reflect what's agreed through that process. The report in front of you is a lengthy one, and it proposes making detailed comments on many aspects of the options document. The key comments are summarised in paragraphs 56 to 73, and there are two appendices which include more detailed comments. The contents of the plan summarised in paragraphs 40 to 51. What I particularly want to focus, though, on is a number of key strategic issues raised by the consultation, which are set out in paragraphs 31 to 36 of the report, which is headed up as an executive summary of the main report. This notes that the County Council welcomes engagement with Blaby District Council on its local plan options, and that the identified proposals at this stage are broadly supported. The plan looks to include infrastructure beyond that required for the local plan itself in support of the strategic growth plan, and that's welcome too. It's noted that if there isn't a joined up approach to housing growth and infrastructure delivery across Leicester and Leicestershire, there's a high risk that there will be unplanned housing and economic growth without adequate highways and education infrastructure. So close cooperation between the key stakeholders in the context of the duty to cooperate will be key. And both the District Council and the County Council will need to be full participants in discussions about meeting the needs of the wider market area, including any unmet housing need from Leicester. The report notes that the growth options considered will require significant infrastructure investment, and that poses significant financial challenges to the County Council and the Council's emerging infrastructure policy, which was mentioned earlier by the Director for Environment and Transport, is intended to provide the framework within which those financial challenges can be addressed. And the report recommends that the Council should seek to address those by formalising partnership working arrangements with the District Council in recognition of the complex preparatory work which will be needed to identify infrastructure requirements and support delivery of the plan. And it's intended that that will be achieved through a funding agreement which would cover costs relating to transport and education provision, including, for example, transport modelling, feasibility studies and scheme design. Finally, it's recognised that there's lots of work to be undertaken by the District Council and partners, including the County Council, to progress the plan through to the submission stage in a year's time. And the report notes that the council will wish to engage fully at every stage to ensure that the local plan is fit for purpose and in the interests of local communities. The recommendations are as set out on the order paper.
Thank you, Tom. Trevor.
Thank you, Chairman. And can I thank you, Tom, for a most thorough airing of all the issues concerned. Districts and boroughs by law have to have an up-to-date local plan, deals with their housing requirements and economic and commercial needs. And the County Council, as the Strategic Road Authority and Education Authority, of course, has to work with them in providing, if you like, the structure that brings all this about. The County Council does look forward to supporting the Blaby local plan in its approach, and particularly notes the flexibility incorporated in it. And because of that flexibility, as North West Leicester District Council looks to work closely with Blaby in the development of an emerging structure to actually forward fund all that local plan requires. That said, very happy, Chairman, accordingly to move the recommendations on page 205, paragraph 4, A, B and C.
Good. And I'd like to second it and place on record that we think Blaby is working very hard on its local plan. And I'd also like to point out to Mr. Bill that if he wants to comment on Blaby's local plan, I'd advise him first of all to comment on Hinckley and Bosworth's lack of local plan, which is leading to out of control development in Hinckley Bosworth. You know, if you're going to comment on local plans, you'd be best commenting on a local plan where he actually has some influence and hasn't got one, rather than seeking to interfere in Blaby, who's working hard on theirs. Having said that, I'll second the motion. Blake.
Thank you, Leader, for bringing me in. I do not hold, well, I do actually, part of my division sits within the Blaby area. So from a corporate perspective, I will support the motion on the order paper, but I'd like to just raise one point, if I may. As one of my villages within my division are extremely anxious about the emerging proposals with regards to the Blaby local planning process. And also ask a question of Tom off the back of that. It has been brought to my attention that on the 3rd of March, the Chancellor, as we know, announced the award of a Freeport status to the East Midlands. And that will necessitate a huge number of an increased number of jobs, perhaps homes in a certain part of the county. The question is, should this not be recognised in any response that we are making to Blaby's Regulation 18 consultation at this stage, or is that something that we will refer to down the line? So that's the question to Tom directly. The other point I'd like to make, again, as a Cabinet member about the actual report, is that I welcome the transparency within the report. I think we've been entirely upfront and honest about the plight of the County Council in terms of being able to forward fund cash flow major infrastructure moving forward. Historically, it might have been the case that the county have been able to rely on reserves and increased levels of revenue coming into the authority to finance particular pieces of infrastructure. That, unfortunately, I don't think is going to be the case moving forward. We all know about the County Council's financial position, and there doesn't seem to be much noise coming from the government in respect of suitable infrastructure funding to the levels that we require. So I think the report rightfully identifies the problem that we face in this respect, and I hope that Blaby, in this instance, or no doubt every other planning authority in due course, whilst developing their local plan, will also have to recognise this particular problem that the County Council has. Thank you, Leader.
Can you answer him on that first point, Tom?
Yes, thank you. And in response to Mr. Payne's question, I think the better time to comment on the potential implications of the Freeport for the Blaby local plan would be at the next stage of the local plan, when we have the preferred option stage. I say that because that'll be in a year's time, and before then, work will have been done on housing distribution across Leicester and Leicestershire, and taken account of a wide range of evidence that will be coming forward, including unmet housing need from Leicester, but also other factors, including, for example, the Freeport. So I think that's the process by which we can consider that impact on housing distribution across the county.
Thank you. Moved by Trevor, seconded by me. All in favour? Thank you. Moving on. 14, exception to contract procedure rules. This is urgent action taken by the Chief in relation to the Green Homes Grant Local Authority Delivery Scheme, pages 267 to 270. We're agreeing an exemption to the Council's contract procedure rules to enable delivery of the Green Homes Grant Scheme. We've got Mike Sands, Director of Public Health, he's back again, and then Lee. Mike.
Yep, thank you, Leader. I'm not certain if my video...
No, it's okay, carry on, Mike, don't fiddle around.
That's
with
okay,
it.
yeah, sorry, my controls are playing up. Not certain if the video is working. So Cabinet may recall a little while ago, we came to Cabinet asking for a exception to contract procurement rules so we could award direct order contract to E.ON because we'd involved them in a bid to the Warm Home Funds, which was successful, and because of their implicit involvement with us, it made sense to award them the money, and it brought in several £1 million worth of investment into Leicestershire to enable us to insulate homes and a number of other works. This one is the same. We've made a second successful bid to the Warm Home Funds. You can see that it's brought in a bid amount of £2.9 million, which will enable us to extend the scheme further. Because of the timing of the bid process, we've not had a chance to bring it to Cabinet formally, which is why we did the direct procurement under Chief Exec's delegation or urgent action rather, and it's coming to Cabinet after the event. So just to explain the history to that.
Oh, is that it? Oh, Lee?
Yeah, more than happy to propose the recommendations on page 267. I mean, it's great news, £2.9 million. Let's get it out there, and let's get the Green Home Grants scheme delivered. So yeah, really pleased to propose it, and well done to Mike and his team for making the application and getting the money in for us to deliver. So happy to propose.
Very good. Mike?
Yeah, from an environment perspective, the largest emitter of greenhouse gases is property. So this is brilliant news, and I'm very happy to second. Thank you.
Very good. Is this another vote blue, we are green one, Blake?
I believe it is, Leader, yes. Yeah. We are a Green Council. Another
vote for the Green Conservatives, moved by Lee, seconded by Blake. All in favour? Thank you. Very good. 15, Annual Review of Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act. It's a policy statement, 271 to 280. So we've got Gary here, he's the Head of Regulatory Services, and then Blake has responsibility for this area. So over to you, Gary.
Thank you, Leader. As indicated in paragraph 2 of the report, the local authority is required to set a policy which outlines how it intends to comply with the Regulation Investigatory Powers Act and the Investigatory Powers Act 2016. This is essentially about surveillance activity that's undertaken by a local authority to ensure that it's lawful, necessary and proportionate. The policy should also ensure that all employees have an overall awareness of what would be deemed to be covert surveillance, and that managers, if they are contemplating carrying out any such activity on behalf of the County Council, are aware that there is an authorisation process that exists. Paragraph 5 confirms a similar report was submitted to Corporate Governance on the 29th of January, and members concluded that the existing policy that we have in place remains fit for purpose. Paragraph 11 outlines what is meant by surveillance, and it's in 3 specific areas. One is directed surveillance, which is covert observations with or without recording equipment. The use of covert human intelligence sources in a county council context, that tends to be trading standards officers carrying out test purchasing exercises of counterfeit goods, unsafe products and the like. And thirdly, there's an area of communications data that we can gain access to, for example, subscriber details to a mobile phone user, the phone number perhaps used in relation to doorstep crime or some scam. It's very important to stress but local authorities may only deploy surveillance for the purposes of preventing or detecting crime. And with directed surveillance and certain types of communications data, the criminality must be of a serious nature. Members should be assured that there is a two-layer authorisation process in place. The first one involves a senior officer within the county council authorising on an application the surveillance activity. But the second layer, probably the most important one, is there is a degree of judicial oversight, and we need to submit that application to the Magistrates Court at a hearing for judicial approval, apart from communications data, which is set by, which is approved through a separate oversight through the Office of Communications Data Authorisations, Central Government. Paragraph 16 provides a breakdown of authorised surveillance activity undertaken by the council, the county council, and in this case, all the surveillance has actually been carried out by trading standards officers. You'll note that the figures are somewhat low. This is mainly as a result of other resource pressures on the service, and therefore we need to scale down some of the surveillance techniques that we may have used previously. So that there has been an overall reduction. That said, we will utilise it when appropriate and necessary. The current covert surveillance policy appears in the appendix to the report, and it's already in the public domain. It's published on the County Council website. I'll finish there, Leader, unless I can assist further.
No, thank you very much, Gary. Blake?
Thank you, Gary. Yes, I will move the motion, the proposed motion on the order paper under item 15. I'd just like to say a huge thank you on behalf of the Cabinet to Gary and his team. Obviously, they've had a huge amount to deal with in terms of regulations to do with the COVID Act, but their business as usual is, as has been described, and they do a brilliant job. We as members and the wider public see occasionally the success stories within the local press and often on TV, but it's through their sheer effort and diligent practices that we get these results and we make Leicestershire a fairer, safer place to live. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you. I'll pass that on to the team. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Louise?
Thank you, Leader. I'm happy to second and also pass my thanks to Gary and his team.
Thank you.
For the work. Thank you.
You're good down there, Gary. Small department, but high performing. All in favour? Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item 15 is the dates of the full council meetings for 2021 and 22-23. These are on pages 281 and 282. I'll move them. Yeah, I'll move the motion on the order paper. Blake?
Yeah, happy to second that. Thank you.
All in favour? Very good. Items referred from Overview and Scrutiny, there are none. And then any urgent items which I've decided to take as urgent. As I mentioned earlier, I have one oral report regarding the council's membership of the LGA, better known as the Local Government Association. So as you all know, ourselves and Lincolnshire have been on a rolling 1 year notice with the LGA for, I think it's 3 or 4 years. And in consultation with Martin in Lincolnshire, we think it's time for us to bite the bullet and formally leave the LGA. We have the feeling that it's just an expensive club for councillors and for council members to go on jaunts down to London. Personally, I don't think it achieves absolutely anything. It doesn't bat for county councils, but then again, how can it? It's like a chariot pulled by multiple horses, and they're all pulling in different directions. So behind the chariot, which you would hope would be benefiting county councils, we have district councils, unitaries, London boroughs, mayors, Mets and cities. So it cannot bat for us, and in my view, it certainly does not. To add insult to injury, not only have we not achieved anything, over the 9 years I've been leader, we've possibly spent getting on towards £1 million on membership and fees for members to go down to London. So it's time we bit the bullet and left. We will still remain a member of the County Councils network, which does a far better job of lobbying government and ministers on our behalf, because it represents county councils, and the issues that county councils face are entirely separate to the issues that districts, unitaries, London boroughs, mayors, Mets and cities face. So we're going to formally leave. We can just leave anyway because we've been on notice, and I want to announce that with the money we saved this year, we're going to use the money we saved this year to fill in more potholes on Leicestershire's roads. You may not think it's a great deal in the great scheme of things, but it certainly shows willing, and it shows to the people of Leicestershire that we value their money, and we're going to spend their money where they would rather it spent, on potholes in Leicestershire rather than jaunts for councillors and council club memberships in London. And whilst I'm here, can I also announce that following consultation with Cabinet members today, the money we put in the budget for Womblers, the voluntary litter pickers, has been so popular that we're going to put in an extra one-off 100,000 to enable all the people that have applied for equipment, and we're getting them at the rate of 500 odd per week applying for equipment. So to enable them to get the equipment and without rationing them, we're going to put an extra one-off £100,000 into a budget to support the Wombles. So that's really by way of announcement. I'll just take anybody else who wants to contribute, and I think I've got Blake who wants to contribute.
Thank you, Leader. Of course, we don't need a formal vote on this. It's any other business, and you've made your announcement, which is the prerogative of the Leader, which I, as your deputy, wholeheartedly support. Your logic makes complete sense. What is of particular note to me, having been a previous lead member of an Environment and Transport Department, is this year's reduction in our roads funding that's come from central government. One would expect at that kind of time that our national body perhaps could have done more to make sure that upper tier authorities and county councils such as ourselves weren't subjected to a further reduction of monies, not least as we here in Leicestershire are the lowest funded county council. So we need to belong to clubs that push our interests and therefore the interests of the Leicestershire taxpayer. So I wholeheartedly support your recommendation you've just made. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Blake. Well, this is the last council before May, so I'll hopefully see you all back, with the exception of Richard, who's going on to pastures new. So thank you very much for attending. That concludes the meeting.